Hello, let's go, guys. That was a bit of a rough start, but how are you both doing? You okay? Yeah.
Good. How you doing, Jay? Good to talk to you again. Hi, Tony.
Yeah, good to talk to both of you. Both of you.
So let's jump straight into this. Obviously, Mick, you're sort of a supporter of the NIST theory and everything that goes along with it to an extent. Obviously, you've got some slides you'd also like to show, so we're going to screen share and hopefully that will all sort of come up as well.
Right.
So yeah, let's just fire away, and then obviously Tony,
Yeah.
you can respond with however you want to respond on issues that you have with the NIST theory and bring up your own stuff as well. And I'll be the third wheel and listen in and try and make sure you both get an equal share when talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I am just going to share this screen. Hopefully, it comes through. So, yeah, you describe me as being a supporter of the NIST theory, which I think is roughly correct. I more or less agree that the NIST gives the best explanations for what happened on 9/11 to the two buildings collapses, the fires and the collapses. So what I want to talk about now is the NIST report on Building 7. Building 7, is one of the more contentious points in 9/11 truth, because people think that, they don't realize that three buildings fell on 9/11, and so Building 7 looks especially suspicious to some people because it looks very similar to some controlled demolitions. That's a valid point. But I think looking at the NIST report, which I'll just do very, very quickly now, I think it gives a reasonable explanation, even if it doesn't match exactly with the details. Now, I think you've got to realize that the NIST investigation, it was a multi-stage thing. The first thing they did was they looked at the fires. They observed the fires. And my first slide here is showing the path of the four different things that they did, four different types of computer analysis that they did. The first thing is the fire dynamics analysis. Then they took the results of that and they fed that into what they call the fire structure interface analysis, which is we refer to as the ANSYS model. And that's a smaller model of just 16 floors that they took the fire information, they applied it to those 16 floors, and then they saw what happened to those 16 floors. Then they did the structural response to the fire. The first one was just how the fire spread through those 16 floors. They figured out what actually happened within those 16 floors to the fire, like which beams were heated, did they expand, did things fail, did connections fail, things like that. Then they took the results of that, and then they applied it to what they call a global model, which is a full height model of World Trade Center 7. And then they saw what happened to the global model. Now, it's very important to realize there are big differences between all these models. The local model is a lot more detailed than the global model, because as Tony knows, it's very difficult to get a very high resolution model of a large, complicated building. So they do higher resolution versions of local things, and they do lower resolution versions of the global thing, so they run faster. So they took the damage information from the ANSYS model, and they fed it into the other model, the LS-DYNA model, which is the global model. Now, I'm going to skip this slide because it's not that important. This is just showing the type of thing they did. They looked at what windows were broken, where smoke was coming from, where they could see fire. They looked at it over time. They came up with a model of where there was fire in all the buildings. They applied it to all the different floors over time. They tried to figure out what the temperature would be. Now, this is using a fire model, which isn't going to exactly match what happened, but it's a reasonable approximation of what happened. Then they did these high resolution models where they modeled individual connections and smaller subsystems to see what would happen. This is like a column 79, which we'll probably talk about in a moment. They figured out which beams suffered damage from these fires. Did some beams fail completely? Did some connections fail? Then they applied it to the global model, which is this 47-story high model, and they saw what happened to that. Then they modeled that. They saw that a section of it collapsed. They saw it collapse because the floors fell around column 79. And then that led to buckling of the exterior and global collapse at almost free fall speed for one section of it. So that's what I really wanted to do there, was give an overview of the various stages of the NIST investigation. It's not just one simple thing where they just threw a few things into a model, saw what happened, and then said that's what happened. There was all kinds of different simulations of different sections and at different resolutions. And so you really have to consider that when you discuss any problem that you might have with the NIST report. And that's my initial opening.
Cool. So if you want to stop screen sharing, we'll head over to hopefully Tony, who's going to now sort of present a comeback to that, I guess.
Right. So we just, I have to do a screen sharing right now myself.
With the audios on your video, Tony, when you get to it, obviously let me know what video you're showing so I can play the audio through, because otherwise no one's going to be able to hear your audio.
Right,
So
right.
just tell me what time frame and that, and I'll get the audio going through.
Right. I'm going to just bring this up. Okay. And what I'm showing here is what I'm going to be showing is the progress report, but I gotta minimize it to go up to share screens. Okay.
Hopefully your screen will come through in a second.
Right. Well, it's not doing it right off the bat. Let's see.
Always a problem with these internet things. So you've on Skype, you've gone to call and then down to share screens.
Right, it's call.
Yeah, and then share
And
screens.
share screens, right?
Yeah.
And then share your screen.
Yeah.
Share a window. Okay, just share. I can share the whole window, actually.
Yeah.
I'll just do the share screen or share window.
Share window would be fine if you know what window
Okay.
your program or your application's in.
Okay.
I like our
All
mix
right.
on the
Just
water.
All right. Are you seeing it?
Yeah, got it up. It's cool.
Okay. All right. So this is the University of Alaska at Fairbanks progress report from September. And there are a number of things that I don't agree with the with the NIST report. As Mick said, they did a submodel, what I tend to call a submodel, 16-story ANSYS model, to do their fire simulation and the fire interface, and then the structural response. And they fed those failures into the larger full building, 47-story building, LS Dyna model. So the failures, and they are better resolution, what Mick said is true there. Here we can show for your audience, Dr. Leroy Hulsey was just showing people where Building 7 was in relation to the towers. It was 350 feet away from the closest tower. And I don't have to go through all this. I'm going to get to, this is column 79 that's circled here. And there's column 44, and the girder between them, girder 8-2001, is what NIST discerned initiated the failure by being pushed off its seat at the 13th floor by the 5 beams to the right of it in the view that you have here. Let me see if you can show that. You'll see these. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, so there's 5 beams here that are framing into this girder that goes between those 2 columns. And this said these beams were heated to like 600 degrees centigrade. They expanded. They were about 52 foot long, approximately all of them, and they pushed this girder off its seat. They expanded somewhere around 5.5 inches. And that would be legitimate at 600 degrees centigrade. And they said the girder sat on a seat at column 79, and this also shows those 5 beams. There's the girder. I want to show where, if he has it here right off the bat. That's the column. That's column 79. That's just a portion of it. One section. You can see here in this diagram, the girder sitting, you're looking down from above. And you see that girder sitting on its seat at column 79. The girder is 11.5 inches wide. The seat, NIST initially said, was 11 inches wide. And it's interesting that they said, because the beams could only expand 5.5 inches. It turned out when the drawings were released 3.5 years after the final report, the seat was 12 inches wide. So they would be short, and they need to get that center web. The girder is just a beam, an I-beam, and the web is carrying the load. If that web went past the edge of the seat, the web would no longer be supported, and you'd lose the load path. All the load would be on the flange, and the flange, generally a flange is much thinner. It's not as deep. Most people can imagine the web is much stiffer in bending in the vertical direction than the flat flange. And so it turned out, and they admitted, the seat was 12 inches wide. Now they said we transposed the axial walk-off distance with the lateral. It's actually 6.25 inches. Would actually be more than that, because it would take 6.29 inches, and I mean to split hairs, but there's also 1 3/16 inch radius between the web and the flange. So they can't get the web beyond the edge of the seat. They can't. And even if they could, there are stiffeners there that I'd like to show you if I can, if he has them here. Okay, these stiffeners were on that girder, but NIST did not show them. NIST did not include them. They left them off, and they would stiffen that flange up significantly. In fact, when you do the calculation, these are 18 inches high. They go all the way out to the edge of the flange from the web, and they're 3/4 thick. They stiffen the flange up. Instead of, if this web went past the edge of the seat, the flange is only, I think it's somewhere on 850 or 7/8 of an inch thick. It would fold up, and the girder would fall. But with these stiffeners and all that depth, it's about 70 or 80 times stronger in bending. It's not going to bend or break. So the web could be past the seat by quite a bit, several more inches. NIST admitted to leaving them off. So in essence, they cheated. Okay, they cheated. There's another problem. Here's the NIST, and this is right from the NIST report. This is, I think, it's either figure 820 or 821. You don't see those stiffeners there. This was done by an structural engineer by the name of Ron Brookman. He put the stiffeners in, and the right aspect ratio of the W33 by 130 girder, which means it's 130 pounds per foot. It's 33 inches deep, and then these are 18 inches tall. That makes that flange very stiff. They left them off because what they were saying wouldn't happen with those stiffeners there, even if the web went past the seat, edge of the seat. Okay, so you see in their report they left them off, and they admitted that also in October 2013. You can see in their finite element model, no stiffeners on the girder. Here's the girder. Okay, no stiffeners there. And this is a shot the University of Alaska added. They increased the thermal coefficient of expansion of the beams to push that web past the seat with the stiffeners on there. And you can see, you're looking at it from the column side. The column's removed, and it doesn't fail. So the web could go, here's the web here, it could go past the seat, and with those stiffeners, it wouldn't fail. So this theory doesn't work. And in addition to that, and I was involved in this, you can't, even if the girder did come off the seat, you can't they don't have enough energy to break through the next floor down. And the way that could be discerned is by doing a finite element analysis to determine the natural frequency of the beams and the girder, the 5 beams and the girder. This girder is just sitting on its seat over here. The bolts are broken. So it's free here. And you want to know the natural frequency, because then you can find the stiffness. And because that's part of the natural frequency equation, which is 1/2 pi times the square root of stiffness over mass. So if you rearrange that, you find the stiffness at 6,000, it's a little over 6,600 pounds per inch. Once you know the stiffness, you can find the I can get this going. All right. And the springs are in series. That's going to hit the next girder down, which has a very high stiffness 10 inches away from the seat, which is about 7.6 million pounds per inch. But when you add two springs together, you do the reciprocal rule like you do for parallel circuits, resistance in parallel. And the total stiffness is about just under 6,700 pounds per inch. Now, energy, knowing stiffness, is equal to 1/2 kx squared, or 1/2 times the stiffness times the deflection squared. We can find the deflection. The deflection turns out to be a little over 32 inches. Knowing the deflection, you can find the force. And that's the stiffness times the deflection. And that's about 215,000 pounds. It would take, I'm just going back here for a minute, this support plate is 2 inches thick by 14 inches deep by about 18 or 19 inches wide. It's sitting under the seat that the girder's sitting on. It's welded to the column with fairly significant welds. The shear strength of those welds is 632,000 pounds. So you can't even break through the next floor down, is what this is saying. They don't have enough energy to break through the next floor down. So the NIST collapse initiation hypothesis, unfortunately, is impossible. It doesn't work. Okay? And while Mick and others might want to think they were reasonable, they were not reasonable here. They're not telling the truth. They were confronted about these issues by a number of us engineers with a lawyer representing us, Dr. William Pepper, who represented the Martin Luther King family in a lawsuit in Memphis in the 90s. This is a well-known lawyer, and he wrote to the Department of Commerce Inspector General, and who wound up letting NIST answer it. Their answer was nothing more than an email saying, "We have looked into your assertions. We don't agree. We stand behind our work." I'm sorry, but that's not a professional way to engage or to answer criticism. And this is serious, legitimate criticism of their report. And just to lend it credibility, there was 2 other reports done for a lawsuit by the Con Edison Electric Company in New York, who had the substation at the bottom of Building 7, the first 2 stories on the north side of Building 7, and Aegis Insurance Company, their insurance company. They filed a suit against Silverstein Properties, World Trade Center 7 Properties, and the engineer of record, Cantor Engineering. This was about 8-9 years ago. And in that suit, one side, Aegis had ARUP do their analysis, and Cantor Engineering, WTC 7 Properties, had Weidlinger do an analysis for them. And they were trying to say that it was negligent design that allowed it to collapse. And Weidlinger, who did the analysis for the Nordenson and ARUP, the report done for Aegis, tried to show it would break through the next floor down, just like NIST. I determined Nordenson was wrong in the ARUP analysis. And then several months later, we hadn't seen the Weidlinger report. It was made available publicly. They said the same thing I said, that they can't break through the next floor down. Now, Weidlinger goes on to say that they moved where the failure initiation was from the 13th floor in the northeast corner to between the 9th and 10th floors, between the north and the south walls on the east side. But their problem is they need the steel to reach 750 to 800 degrees centigrade to get, when the one floor breaks and drops and goes to the next one, that it's weak enough to break through. But they don't release their thermal analysis. So there's no credibility there yet. So we really don't have, I just want to finish up with one point.
Okay.
Presently, we have no legitimate analysis showing how this building could have come down. Okay, you can go, Mick.
Okay, thanks, Tony. That's a pretty good overview, I think, of the position of the 9/11 truth, A9/11 right now. And I think, like the last thing you brought up there, the 2 other studies, is a very good point, because it shows just how difficult it is to actually get a definitive answer in a complicated situation like this. Building 7, as you know, we only really had observations of what was going on from the outside. We couldn't really see what was happening on the inside, which floors were falling, when they fell, what was actually happening. So you had to kind of do a lot of assumptions about what was actually going on inside, kind of extrapolating from what we see on the outside. And I think, the fact that there's 3 different results coming from 3 different studies is, it's a very interesting point. And that actually, I think, applies within the NIST study itself. If you look at the, let me just bring my screen up again real quick here. If you look at the actual diagrams that they use in the NIST study, can you see my screen now?
Yeah,
sure.
All right, that's just an animation about what you were talking about earlier with the beam sliding off, and that's what it would have to do to slide off. But what I wanted to show you actually
you're missing the fact that the girder is going to grow, Mick. The girder would be
that's another point, but let's get to that in a minute.
Okay.
What I wanted to show you was the NIST study. The ANSYS simulation came up with a set of damage that the fires did to the building. And you can see here, these little black dots are what they refer to as being full connection damage. And these beams here, the red beams, are the beams that suffer significant damage themselves. So this is column 79 over here. And let's see, I think we might be on the right floor. But the damage...
They're all the same. Doesn't matter, yeah. About the 7th
there's damage that is shown throughout the building. And when they took this pattern of damage, they took the data from this simulation here, the ANSYS simulation, and then they applied it to this full height model. It caused a collapse, but it didn't actually use that particular connection that you just talked about in this simulation.
Sure it did. Sure it did. It had to. It had to, Mick.
But it didn't.
What did they? Well, tell me what they used then, Mick.
They
say in chapter 12 they used what they got from the ANSYS.
Oh, they did. They used that damage pattern, but that damage pattern didn't have that particular column failure, that particular column connection failure, A2001 to column 79. That wasn't the first thing that actually failed. There was actually a number of simultaneous collapses, which you can see here. There's collapses over here, and then there's collapses over here. This is the ANSYS-based damage application is resulting in floor structure failures around column 79 to 81, which, as you know, is all the interior east side of the building.
Well, they haven't told us that in the report. You can't just show a picture like this.
There in the actual
when we want an analysis. This is not an analysis.
If you look at this particular image here, which people are familiar with, the girder in question, A2001, I believe, is somewhere over here. It didn't actually fall down through the other floors.
You need to justify when you give a presentation like this and you're making a claim. You have to justify it. You can't just say this is what we found. They have not justified
you were saying that you found that some particular thing didn't happen earlier. So I think, if I did the same, but this isn't really, something that's actually up for debate, really.
Well, it is. Sure, it's up for debate.
We know that the ANSYS damage contained other connections.
They haven't released their input.
Well, look at this slide here. There's 2 areas in which collapse is happening simultaneously. Now, this collapse over here towards the center of the building is completely separate from this collapse over here.
If they left off the stiffeners, which would have prevented the failure I showed earlier.
No, I agree with that.
To say they might not have left something off here. You can't trust them.
They may well have done, but my point here is that you're focusing just on this one connection. And your analysis of that one connection is pretty good because it's quite comprehensive. And you did identify a number of things like the stiffener plates that were missing and the differences in the width of the plate and other things, the amount of thermal expansion, things like that. That's all valid. And that's something that, in that limited case does actually make a difference. But what we've got to look at is the actual global case.
No, but
And when NIST did it, they didn't use just that one collapse of that one girder.
I hear what you're saying.
A large number of other collapses of other girders.
I saw you say this on the internet, okay, recently. But you have to be specific. You can't tell people we found some other areas where it collapsed. Well, how did that happen? You have to show. They're not showing that.
Well, that's what came out of their simulation.
Well, but I want to see the results. The simulation's going to show the stresses.
I think
they didn't show us that.
Just to weigh in, obviously, like to an extent, obviously, Mick can only show what's been released, and obviously, I know from your standpoint, you're like, well, why aren't I releasing it? You can't theorise or give an opinion around something when the complete information hasn't been given, and why aren't they giving it? But obviously, from Mick's standpoint, he can only present to you what has been released. So
I'm questioning why Mick supports it if he doesn't have a basis or justification for supporting it.
Right. Well, what I'm trying to explain to people is that your criticism of the NIST report hinges around this one connection, the connection of Girder A2001 to column 79, and the fact that you think it couldn't get off the seat, and if it did, then it wouldn't damage the floors below. However, that's not what NIST are claiming in their global model. They claim that they describe that as a possible initiation event or a probable initiation event because they did some simulations of just that one thing because it seemed like a likely thing.
It's the main
you've identified some problems with their simulation, and that's perfectly valid. That we should look about whether that is actually possible that seat that girder did actually go off its seat or not, and it's possible that it did not. That is something that should be looked into. However, that doesn't invalidate the entire study because the actual simulations that they use did not use that as a necessary component.
When an engineer, look, there's auto companies right now that are being fined very heavily for cheating on their emissions. Okay, Volkswagen was one, and somebody else just recently, I can't remember who, a big truck company. If people cheat, they have to redo things. This I hate. I don't necessarily like. I wish I had a better word to use, but the only word to really describe it is cheating.
Well, you're kind of implying a conspiracy there when incompetence might be a better explanation.
Nick, you shouldn't even use the word conspiracy theorist. It's not correct. Okay,
well,
there are conspiracies in the world.
It's factually correct in this case. If they cheated, they must have conspired, unless you think it was just one person who did it.
No, I'm saying, Mick, we caught them cheating. If you're caught cheating in college, you get failed.
A conspiracy.
Okay? Well, we did catch them cheating.
What you caught them, though, was them using figures that were incorrect.
Nick, if you want to say that was all an accident, fine, I'll go along with it. But when we confronted them with it, I would go along with it until we confronted them with it. And when we confronted them through a lawyer, through the Department of Commerce Inspector General, and they gave us a curt answer like, we don't agree with your assertions, we stand behind your work. End of discussion. Then I have to say there's something seriously wrong. That they will not support their work. They don't support their work.
With in obviously playing sort of on Tony's side here is obviously if they're presenting events or something that's happened, they need to take into consideration all factors. They can't leave out little bits of information or little parts just so their experiment then works.
I think you've got to take into account that this study was done nearly 10 years ago, and there were limitations to things like computer power that we had back then that are less of an issue now, but still an issue. And if we were to do the study again now, it probably would come up with a somewhat different result, like the slide I'm looking at now. I'm not sure if it's still on screen.
They won't do it, Nick. They're refusing.
That would look completely different because when you do simulations of things like this, the cascading effect of chaotic events means that the end result ends up very different. If you look at
you can't get a cascade, Mick, unless you get an individual failure somewhere. That isn't hard to analyze.
That's true.
And you have to show
the individual failures would probably end up being a bit different because there's a large amount of damage. There's a large amount of damage that was discovered by the ANSYS model. Now, this is just one flaw.
Nick,
this is just one flaw here.
I'm not willing to accept that as readily as you are because that's not an analysis you show in there. What that is just saying what the damage is based on what somebody said. I can tell you,
Well, it's based on that simulation. It's based on that ANSYS simulation. Now, what you're saying basically is you don't trust their description of what came out of the ANSYS simulation.
I want to verify it, and they won't allow us to do that. And I don't trust them because I found them leaving things out that would have made a big difference. So no, I have no basis to trust them.
Well, I would like to verify it too, but it's unfortunate that we can't. But that's what we got to go with right now.
Well, no, we don't have to go with people they're doing bad work, not showing their work, leaving things out, and not telling us to just accept it on faith.
I think that kind of goes both ways, though. Like if you look at Leroy Hulsey's study, the professor at the University of Alaska, he has given this slideshow which you showed earlier, and he's not released any of his work that goes behind that. And you explained earlier that you thought that he wasn't doing it because no one would understand it. You can
repeat what Leroy Hulsey he will release, and he did show in the presentation, and he will release his model. NIST hasn't done that. And I can tell you right now, anybody that does an analysis with what Leroy Hulsey showed will come up with the same results.
That's great. No, I'm looking forward to seeing that. But right now, we don't actually have that. And you've given these slides as being evidence when there's no actual data behind them.
Because you can do hand calculations and repeat it.
Yeah, but if you're doing hand calculations, you look at a very, very narrow aspect of what's happening.
There's nothing hard to understand. That girder's going to expand. It's going to be inside the envelope. But I meant to mention to everybody that those side plates on the column trap the girder. And the reason it traps the girder is the girder's going to heat up too. As soon as it heats up, just 40 degrees centigrade, it's going to be within the envelope of the side plates, which stick out 1.8 inches from the flange of the column, and that girder is going to go against that side plate. NIST shows the side plates in their model. They even say it's there against it, and then they act like the girder they show it in another view somewhere in that report. David Cole had sent it to me. They show it against the side plate, but they just ignore that. That's the side.
Well, I haven't seen that myself, so you'd have to show that to me.
I'll send that to you, Mick. Regardless, there's no question, logically, and you can do hand calculations to show that girder.
Right, but you're doing hand calculations on that one thing. You're doing it on this one column.
Mick, you haven't provided anything else, any other failure with an analysis to show what NIST says could happen. What they are trying to say is
NIST doesn't show any analysis at all if you're going to be like that.
No, they do show this, and they're missing the stiffeners, and they're ignoring the side plates, and they said they made a mistake with the width of the seat. That's very suspicious because you can only get 5.5 inches of expansion with the beams at 600 degrees centigrade, and they say the seat was 11 inches wide when it was actually 12. It's pretty hard to misread the drawing. So you're being very trusting with NIST, and I don't have a basis for that, Mick, because I've seen, at least in the case of this report, that there's been some underhanded things done. So they need to come clean, and they are refusing to do that by just stonewalling. That's not right. And as members of the public concerned with the safety of the public, engineers need to press them to release it, and the politicians should be pressing them. The fact that they're not is disconcerting.
Well, you say that you could do a hand calculation and prove that it wouldn't happen.
You can.
So then, what's the issue then? Why don't you just do a hand calculation, show it to people, and then that's proven it? That proves it's controlled demolition.
And then when I didn't say that. I said the NIST World Trade Center report is non-explanatory. It has errors, omissions, distortions, and ignoring of structural features that make it impossible. So they have not explained the failure. I want them to redo the investigation. That's what we want them to do.
We all like that, but the question is, can we spend millions of dollars doing that? What's the actual basis for that? A few errors like this in one small aspect of it.
How much did 9/11 cost economically? It's like $20 or $30 billion. So to sit there and all of the public irritation over this, it's well worth another $30 to $50 million. I think they spent 20 on the whole World Trade Center investigation. When it costs 20 to 30 billion, thousands of times more than that in economic damage. And they haven't satisfied the public. especially when we find out that they left things out that would have mattered.
Well, you're saying that would you think that the University of Alaska study has proven that World Trade Center 7 could not collapse via fire?
Well, they said they looked at the connections. This connection and this.
But do you agree with that? That's the assertion that they
I want to look at the study. I want to look at the study. Okay.
So you think it's premature then to say that it's proven anything?
No, he's saying it could not come down by fire in his mind because he's looked at the connections, and the worst case is the one this used, and that couldn't even happen. So it's like saying, I need somebody that weighs 150 pounds, but everybody I have 10 guys, and they all weigh more than 220. So you never meet the criteria. NIST doesn't meet the criteria.
Okay, but Hulsey also hasn't released his study, so he hasn't really proven that he couldn't collapse through severe fire.
Hulsey
but he says, based on his calculations, that he's proven it. Do you think
Hulsey has shown that the NIST analysis is an error?
Well, he says that says he's proven that it didn't collapse from fire.
And then on top of that, he said he looked at all the connections, and like I said, if the worst case is what NIST used, and that can't happen, then none of the other connections can fail.
Well, who's saying that's the worst case? I mean, that's
if you look at that building,
three simulations, case A, B, and C.
I can look at that building.
A case D or a case A2.
I can look at that building and the erection drawings and say that was the worst case, or the case that would have the most potential for failure, and it couldn't happen there. It was still a long way.
They certainly. Just looking at Hulsey's study again, like his next slide here, the slide above that. Sorry, he has a comparison between his study and NIST study, and there's a couple of points at the bottom here. He says UAF based on NIST column temperature, column 79 did not buckle under gravity loading. Now, I think this is a bit indicative of the quality of this study, because NIST didn't find that column 79 buckled under gravity loading either, because of the column temperatures.
No, he's saying they said it was under gravity loading after it lost lateral support from the girder.
This is him talking about. He talks about it in the presentation quite near the start. He says, like, we wanted to see if the column lost its strength because of the fires. And he's saying here, no, it did not lose its strength because of the fires.
And this said that too. They said the columns didn't get
exactly. Degrees. So why is he putting this in a comparative studies thing? He's comparing something that NIST didn't say with something he's claiming to have found. One of the results of his study.
It says there, based on this column temperatures, column 79 did not buckle under gravity loading. Okay,
and they say the same thing.
What he said in the presentation, if you listen to it, he said you would think the columns buckled. When you first hear about the collapse, and they said it happened by fire, he's saying that just in your own mind, you would think the columns were overheated and collapsed.
Yeah, that's what he said.
That's all he was saying there. So don't take that out of context.
It's in a slide that's labeled comparative studies. Yeah, and the point above that, the thermal horizontal movement, is a comparison between NIST 5.5 inch and the UAF 2 inches.
And I'll give you what's happening there. Okay, that's apples and oranges.
He's comparing apples and oranges.
Well, and he did the analysis you need him to do. Okay, I am in contact with him. Most of you guys probably know that. And what you have there is NIST showing the 5.5 inches that the girder was pushed relative to the column, and what Hulsey is showing there is with shear studs, that girder would have stayed with the column. However, he needed to show where the girder would go without shear studs, on the beams and the girder, and he did that. Okay, and the girder does move 3.8 inches relative to the column from its original position, and the column moves 1.9 inches. So now you have about 5.7 inches of relative movement. Still not enough to even get the web off the seat, even without stiffeners. And it would only go 3.5 inches anyway, because it would be trapped behind the side plate. That was without side plates. So
Right, so he used the wrong number here. But I think the problem is that he's been using this slide before he did this. He had almost this exact same slide for over a year.
What you're doing there is saying you have a typo. So your entire
It's not a typo. He discusses in detail this 2 inches, and he compares it verbally many times to NIST's figure of 5.5.
I just explained to you that he did an analysis without shear studs, and the girder did move relative to the column. And the total relative movement is 5.7 inches. And I'm telling you, that's not enough to get the girder off the seat without stiffeners. And the stiffeners are on there. It could go a lot further than that. And on top of that, it gets trapped after 3.5 inches of movement. And even then, if it comes off, it couldn't break through the next floor down. So there's 4 or 5 things there that show this is totally bogus nonsense. And I'm sorry if I get a little bit annoyed at it, but we've been talking about this for quite some time, and it's hard to tolerate any support for this kind of theory.
But my problem here is that people are putting forward this Alaska study as if it's some kind of authoritative, definitive study when you've got ridiculous errors like this in the slides.
That's not a ridiculous error. He was showing what it would be with shear studs, that the girder would stay with the column.
If he was trying to compare his study against NIST's study, wouldn't he have done a list of points, pros and cons? The only 2 comparison points he made there, other than the differences in the type of simulation, were those 2 numbers.
Are you willing to throw his study up?
Which were wrong, and they were nonsense.
He didn't give you the relative movement. He will give you that, and I know what it is, and I just told you that. I just told you what the relative movement was. So he gave you...
And he should have told us that a long time ago.
Oh, it took 7 years for NIST to do it. The World Trade Center.
The slide I'm showing now from Hulsey's study is showing like the various displacements of the floor in the building, and it's not showing any local connection failures.
Much more important here, what you should be looking at, NIST also locked down the east wall. What he's showing is the east wall is going to bow out. If you had a structure inside a trash can and lit a fire, a heavy structure like the core, the exterior would move. NIST locked down the exterior. All he's missing here is the relative movement of that girder to the column.
Which I think is the actually important point.
But it doesn't work even then when he did it. And I just told you what the results were. It still doesn't work. You have no argument, Mick.
I think the issue with both of these studies, though, is obviously you've got the NIST report, which is leaving things out, and then you've got obviously this report, which certain parts of it are yet to be released, if that makes sense. Obviously, not all the information's there, and some of it may be seen as like theorising. Obviously, I know you've heard the answers, Tony, yourself, because you've been in contact with the guy. But obviously, from Mick's standpoint, he's only going with what he can see on this floor. That's only one part.
He showed in the earlier analysis and the start of his presentation that you can't get it off with all that. The amount of movement could never get it off, that the girder gets trapped behind the side plate anyway. And the stiffeners would, even if it ever got past the side plate, which it couldn't, the stiffeners stop it from breaking. And they can't break through the next floor down. That has nothing to do with the whole movement thing. And what Mick's doing there, it's like, somebody got a 10 on their test, and then they want to complain the teacher subtracted 1 point over here. And
well, no, I'm looking at the actual conclusion of the entire study. This is actually what he came up with these numbers as being the reasons why it couldn't have collapsed. Now, you understand what the actual issues are, but I'm just basically looking at his presentation here. And a lot of people will take things like, it was only 2 inches or whatever, and they will think that because of that it couldn't have happened.
It's a lot more than that. And the reality is, NIST cannot show engineering-wise that their failure mechanism works. They can't. It's a sham. It's a disgrace, and it should be redone.
It would be nice if we could redo it. But the reason I brought up this study from Alaska was that you were talking about how much it would cost. I think you mentioned like $20 million or something like that. And this study, the Alaska study, was funded by AE 9/11 Truth, and I think it was like something like $360,000 that they paid for it.
Well, they're on a shoestring relative to what NIST used.
Relatively,
it was $20 million
So
The
would you say
entire
that that
World Trade
is
Center
an
study.
insufficient amount of money to prove whether or not Building 7 could have collapsed from fire or not?
No, I don't think. I think you could do it for that. Okay, the way
And do you
the
think
way
that they will,
programs work
when
in
the
a
final
place like
report
this.
comes out, do you think they will have
Well, I
proven
think
it?
people are going to try to argue it, and I'd hate to hear them use the kind of argument where, well, this could have been right here or there. I want them to show their work. They're not showing their work, and they're making assertions that when we do see their work, is shown to be impossible. So I have no faith in what they've done so far, and I'd like to know who's going to be doing. They didn't save any of the steel.
If the University of Alaska is doing this study, which you think will be definitive, then why is there a need for a new NIST report?
Because it's a government agency's responsibility.
But if it's been proven by an actual study,
9/11 was a crime. Okay, if there's a crime committed in your town or state, and the investigation is messed up somehow by law enforcement, and a citizen comes along and shows it was messed up, the town has an obligation. The government of the state or the town has an obligation to redo the investigation.
Sure, but
right?
The crime here was flying the planes into the buildings. That was the actual crime, and that was what was investigated.
No. The damage, how the buildings collapsed, is also part of the crime, Nick. Especially
as a result of the crime.
They're the results of the crime. They're part of it. They need to be investigated. These were the biggest failures, building failures in history. The most catastrophic building failures, and they have not been adequately explained. And they need to be adequately explained.
Well, the engineering community seems okay with the what came out.
Really? Like, name names, Mick. I saw you say that people...
There very many engineers off the top of my head, but
all right.
there's been quite a lot of papers published. I
work with engineers every day.
Changes to the building code based on what happened?
Very few changes were accepted for the building code. Very few. They just increased the thickness of the...
There was about 20 or so different points.
There's very few...
Improving the strength of connections, like this connection we have here.
Yeah, and did the International Building Code accept that, Mick? I don't think it did.
I don't know about that particular one, but I know they did actually accept quite a lot of them, and some of them were structural.
They accepted about 10% of the NIST recommendations. Very few. Very few. Okay?
What I don't understand is, obviously, with the sort of NIST report, if it is flawed, which it's been shown to be it is because they've left certain parts out, why would people necessarily believe it? Because obviously their work is flawed. Like, they've left stuff out to make the towers collapse, or it to fit the situation, fit the narrative of the story, or fit what happened.
You've got to look at it in context there, Jay. Like, what was missing, which Tony claims was left out, and I would say was just an omission or a simplification, doesn't actually have a huge effect on the overall global model. It has an effect, perhaps, on that small local area, that local connection. And people keep saying, like, "Oh, that has to be the way it collapsed. If it didn't collapse there, it's impossible that anything could have happened." But the actual simulations that NIST did show collapses starting in other areas, the 79 to 80. This area here.
You know what a root cause analysis is, Mick? You should know. Okay.
I do. You find the root cause, basically.
You have to show what the root cause is. They haven't shown that. The root cause they're claiming is impossible.
Well,
so we want them to redo the analysis.
Of course, it's the planes flying into the building.
No, Mick, Building 7. Look, these are engineering failures, catastrophic ones, the greatest in history. Okay, and it's a farce that they haven't been adequately explained, and it's a farce that they left out structural features. That if there was just an error, whoever did that is incompetent.
I think
completely incompetent, and it gets worse than this, Mick. I'll tell you why. Because their answers, they were asked. Let me just make this point, Jay.
Yep.
They were asked about leaving those stiffeners off. It took 19 months for them to answer. They kept stonewalling it. Finally, they said,
"Government for you."
Well, I don't care. It's not just government, okay? Everybody in the government's not incompetent. Somebody might be hiding something. The problem is they said the stiffeners were for web crippling. Our analysis showed web crippling wasn't an issue. Therefore, we didn't need the stiffeners. A structural engineer named Ron Brookman asked them, he sent them an FOIA letter, asking about why they left the stiffeners off, because they also strengthened the flange, they say failed. They have never answered him. They've never answered him. They admitted leaving the stiffeners off, saying their analysis showed they weren't needed. That would be an incompetent analysis at best. At worst, it's criminal subterfuge. And we need a new investigation because of this kind of thing. I don't trust anything in that report because of what I'm seeing.
I'm really confused as to why you keep wanting a new government investigation. You say it's the government's responsibility, but if they do an investigation, you're just not going to trust it.
No, that's not true.
You know that they're not going to do a new investigation.
That's not true.
You know that they're not going to do a new investigation.
If you show me a root cause I can believe in, I'll believe it. I haven't seen a root cause I believe in yet, Mick. And that's why...
Here's the thing, though. They're not going to do an investigation, so we're going to have to go with what we have.
Why aren't they going to do a new investigation, Nick?
Because they don't see sufficient justification for it. They don't think that these...
So are they incompetent or are they hiding something? Which one is it? Are they incompetent or are they hiding something?
Well, I think the most likely thing is incompetence, if there is anything there, but I don't think it's like great incompetence. I think they did a good faith effort at making it a model. You have to make certain simplifications when you're making a model like this.
You can't make that argument because we confronted them with it several times. They're stonewalling.
Well, after they actually made the model, then they're done with it. The people moved on.
No, but they're not done with it. I can't get away with that in my work. If somebody shows us an error, I have to redo it. I can't just say I'm
in the private sector, so it's a bit different.
No, I'm not in the private sector, Mick. I'm actually working for the U.S. Navy right now, right?
Okay.
Well, my issue is obviously with World Trade Center 7, we say about planes and stuff, but no plane ever hit World Trade Center 7, and I always think to myself, how did the fires get in there? Because it was like 350, I don't know, yards, meters, however far away, feet
away.
Yeah,
about 120 yards.
How does the debris sort of reach there and then start causing fires?
The picture I just put up here, this is the south side of the building. Which is the side which is facing World Trade Center 1 and was hit by the falling debris. And you can see there's a vast amount of damage to the south side of the building. There's a chunk taken out of the upper...
But that's not where the failure started. They say the failure started...
No, it's not, but this is explaining how the fires got into the building. You see there's smoke coming out throughout the entire building. This means that air can get in through everything on this side. So you've got these compartment fires which are fed by a readily available air source. And so there's really no problem with the fires actually getting started.
Can I say something?
With burning debris.
Building 7 is the only building on its block. The two buildings adjacent next to it, the post office and Verizon building, got hit with some debris, small amount of debris. Neither one of them had fires. Only building 7. That's the only building that wasn't in the World Trade Center block.
That's right.
Okay, that had a fire. The other buildings got hit, no fires.
But do you find that suspicious somehow?
Well, I do have a problem with it. Okay, it had fires on 10 floors. No other building had fires on any floors that was off of that block. And then I have a problem with it this way. There was no fires. There's no photographic evidence of any fires in Building 7 until 12:15, an hour and 47 minutes after the second tower went down. That tower, can you show...
Well, that's because the fire started on the south side, which was facing the disaster area.
They only took pictures on the north side? No, they first showed up allegedly on the side of the building.
So you think someone's hiding a bunch of photos of the south side of the building?
47 minutes is a long time. I think there's a possibility there was arson, Mick. I'll be honest.
So you think that... So, looking at this damage here on the south side of the building, is it really that implausible?
It's completely understandable that things could just come off of the 4 or 5 stories in the tower, 350 feet away, even though gypsum and concrete dust should be smothering it, and they'd fly over and start fires on 10 stories in just one building, not the other 2. Yeah, that's completely plausible, Mick. That's what you're saying. That's what you're believing anyway. To me. Right, well, that's fine. It's not very plausible to me. Okay, those fires will be getting doused in the North Tower when it started collapsing. It was 350 feet away.
That's not true, though. If you look at the North Tower collapse, you can see a huge fireball as the North Tower actually collapses because there's a large amount of fire going on just before it collapsed.
Nick, it's not 350 feet. It's a long way. Actually, can you show? I can show it. I have a I had something.
Mick, stop screen sharing for a minute and let Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my like simplifying it for me in simple terms is 3 buildings fell due to fire, and 2 of them were hit by planes. And to me, it's like that's the only time in history that sort of happened.
2 of them were hit by planes. Is actually they didn't just fall due to fire. They fell due to being hit by planes as well. If it was just fire, the towers were probably not at fault.
We can talk about that too, because they came down very evenly. And here's the tower stuff. I just wanted to show. I got to share the screen.
Share screen. Cool. Share screen, and it'll come up.
Yeah, you didn't see it yet, right? Okay.
No, it's not come up yet. Yeah. Is this a video or image?
No, just image from the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yeah. Share a window.
I'm enjoying listening to you both, by the way. Like, you've both got valid points, and I think it makes sense. I understand Mick's only got what he can sort of work with here, and then obviously Tony's got what he's working with, and some of the data hasn't been released publicly yet. And
can you see my window yet?
No, not yet.
I'm going to share the screen instead, because it didn't...
Let's see. Yeah, got that up.
Okay, you can see it?
Yep.
Okay, so what I wanted to show, here's the debris map from FEMA. It shows Building 7 is in the outer edge of the light debris band. Okay, and the post office and the Verizon building, these 2 buildings, neither one of them had fires. They had some small debris. At any rate, here's a big chunk coming off. This is World Trade Center 1 right here in the North Tower. Here's Building 7. That's about what you would expect. You wouldn't expect things to fly 350 feet just from the fire zone, because that'd be hot stuff when it's being quenched with all that dust. So, and then you don't see fires in Building 7 for an hour and 47 minutes. Sounds a little hokey to me, Mick, to just wave your hands, which is what NIST did, or Shiab Sunder, or those guys, and said, it had to be started by the North Tower collapse. Well, that's a wild guess.
Wasn't World Trade Center 7 sort of... I mean, someone just commented saying it's up. World Trade Center 7 is upwind as well, so obviously maybe...
It seems like a rather misleading photograph.
The wind. There was some wind out of the north. I don't know that would have mattered.
The debris did actually hit World Trade Center 7.
I didn't say no debris hit it. I'm saying it wouldn't be very big pieces, and I have a problem with.
Well, it doesn't take much to start a fire. You could a 3-foot piece of
there was fires on 10 floors. There's no fires in the Verizon, or you would expect. It's not absolute, but you would expect there to be fires in the Verizon building, the post office.
Well,
for something
it's a higher building as well.
Just in the middle.
Different factors.
Just that doesn't matter whether it's higher. Just in the middle, just on the middle building, the buildings on either side, nothing happens to. Just the middle building gets 10 fires. I can see maybe just about 1 fire in the Verizon building, 2 in the post office, 10 in Building 7. No, none in them, only in Building 7. I mean, investigators would wonder about that, Mick. An honest investigator would wonder. And the fact that they're not, and the fact that they got rid of all the steel. NIST they got no steel from Building 7. Here's the most catastrophic, allegedly, first failure of a high-rise superstructure type building, large building, steel frame building in history, and they get none of the steel. And Mayor Rudy Giuliani was involved in that. Okay, and
can I just show you something here from the speaks of an earlier point?
Stop screen sharing, Tony.
What do I do? Just turn it off?
Yeah, just
click on the plus and do stop.
Did it go off?
No. If you go to Skype,
I got to go to Skype. Yeah. Say stop.
Call. And then
call and share screens and then stop sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That should work.
Cancel. Did that work?
No, it's still up on my screen.
It's not giving me stop sharing your screen. Oh, maybe I have to.
There we go.
Okay, you have to click it. Okay. All right. Did it stop now?
So I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, Mick, fire away.
Now this photo here is of World Trade Center 1, right. Which was taken just 6 minutes before it collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you look at the amount of fire in that it's really not that implausible that it could make its way down to
Mick,
World Trade Center 7.
It has to fly 350 feet.
So what? So what?
Oh, that's a horizontal flight. That's a lot.
No, it comes down from here down to here.
Okay.
Or down to here.
Nick,
it's not horizontal.
Can you show?
Very shallow.
Can you show when the collapse starts and all the gypsum dust that should have been smothering those fires?
Well, I make fires in my fireplace every night, and they get covered in ash. And when I go in the morning, there's sometimes glowing embers because they've been covered by ash. All it takes is a few embers to start a fire. You don't need to have a large fireball.
10 floors and none in the buildings adjacent to it. None. Zero. Fires on 10 floors.
If you take a large piece of burning wood and you throw it off the top of a mountain, it'll still be burning when it hits the ground.
Nick, I'm saying
the fire will actually make you. The wind will actually make you burn.
The chances of flying that far away.
It comes from down here to down.
Good. No. You're showing big buildings that are very tall. That's a good distance. 350 feet. 350 feet is a football field in length. Things don't fly on their own that easy when they're very heavy. And I got news. I got one to tell you. Okay. Shyam Sunder. They do it with and without debris damage of the southeast facing corner of Building 7. In the one, they claim only the southeast corner got hit. And we have a photograph. We have photographic evidence right there, right. And then they did the with debris damage where they said 7 columns were severed. You may not be aware of how much force it would take to take out one of those columns in the perfect sweet spot. It's 10,000 pounds for each column. And I can tell you, NIST has no evidence of that, and they should have never done that with debris model. And the reason I can say that is because Shyam Sunder implicitly admitted, that they had no evidence when he said the real damage is probably in between the with and without debris model. That means they have no evidence.
The damage doesn't actually contribute that much to the fact of the collapse of World Trade Center 7. It changes the way it looks.
The damage contributed none. Okay? They couldn't get the collapse started with their initiation. Column 79 is not going to buckle. It's never going to happen.
No, they did simulations without damage, and column 79 still buckled with the fires alone.
No, because they said the girder came off its seat, and it didn't. It couldn't. So their whole initiation and their whole collapse progression is bogus, and it doesn't match. And here's another thing I want to get into with you. They say the east interior came down. If that were true, when they collapsed, when the east interior came down, the east exterior would have had tremendous deformation. It does in their model, but it doesn't in reality, because in their model, they're taking it down. And when you stop laterally supporting columns after 15 or 20 stories, they're going to buckle under their own weight. That happens in the NIST model. It doesn't happen in reality because those columns are probably still there. And you know that I say that the east penthouse collapse was probably just in the, what are you showing there, Mick?
This is showing a time lapse of the fires, just to show that the fires were actually going throughout the entire process. You can see the fires spreading here on World Trade Center 2, and you can't see anything right now, but you can see small fires across here, and you'll see fires spread across World Trade Center 1. So it's just showing there's a very active fire going on.
Well, we all saw a lot of video of the fires, Mick. So I don't know what that's telling us. I'm saying it's very hard for burning items to fly 350 feet. And I'm saying that the NIST collapse model doesn't have a basis. Okay? And they left things out to try to make it plausible. And when we found out, we confronted them, and they're refusing to own up to it and come clean and redo the analysis. They're refusing to do that.
I think we've discussed why, and I think the ball's in your court now. You've got to actually demonstrate.
No, the ball's in the government's court. They should.
You know that they're not going to do anything.
Well, then they should be fired.
You can keep saying you think there should be a new investigation, but there isn't going to be one
because we have a corrupt government. That's why. Tell the truth.
Well, I agree with that.
Anybody that's proven wrong, Mick, in an official capacity and doesn't change what they're doing is corrupt and needs to be removed.
I think perhaps we have a court system for that. But
we're going to it should go to court, and the court will find that if the court's not corrupt, there's a lot of corruption in this country. And this whole thing about how these buildings came down is entirely, unfortunately, it's entirely bogus. And we are living in la-la land. And you know what? It's a problem living in la-la land. You know why? Because when you don't know what the reality is, you can't make good decisions. Okay? As adults, we want to know what the reality is so we can make good decisions. And we can't with this. We can't.
Myself, obviously, sort of being in the middle, it's very hard to like sway on either side because, like I've said countless times, you've got one side which produces an experiment and a simulation, etc., based on, you know, information that they've tailored to fit suit by removing certain elements, and then obviously you've got you know, another experiment that's come out and is kind of proving that fires didn't collapse the building, and here's why, because, and then showing that, you know, the NIST report is flawed, but yeah, we're not able to see sort of everything. This, you know, we're not able to see it all published yet, so I think it's hard to form an opinion on.
Here's the problem, Jay. Usually in an engineering situation like that, when there's a controversy, it gets resolved because you relook at it. They're refusing to do that. So I have anybody that does that, you have to
they're
doubt.
Refusing because they feel it's been sufficiently looked at. And I would encourage people to go and read the NIST report, because there's a lot of information in there that you're just not talking about. You're talking about one thing, it's one initiating event.
No good engineer uses that kind of excuse, Mick. No good engineer does that. If somebody comes up with a criticism, it's got to be discussed and answered. They're not doing it. They're refusing to answer.
There's all kinds of criticism, man. You know, do we have to discuss like beams from space?
Mick,
you think that your criticism is very reasonable, but you think that other people's criticism is less reasonable.
No, there was the unreasonable. No planes hit the towers. That's nonsense. All that kind of jokey stuff. Okay? You can go debunk that all day, Mick, if that's what you like to do. Nobody serious like myself ever even took that serious. That's probably people put in here to make people look bad. These building failures have problems, true, real problems, okay? And we're not talking about insignificant issues that serious people like myself didn't talk about.
Well, there's people within architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth who think that planes did not hit the Pentagon.
There's nobody talking for 9/11 Truth that talks about that.
Yeah, there is. There's your CEO lady.
No, he did not say anything about the Pentagon, and most of us leave that alone because we're not sure. We can look at the buildings and say there's problems. There's serious anomalies with these buildings, and there's serious problems with the reports, and we want them redone. And the people that did them are saying, no, we don't agree. That's not how engineering is done. When somebody criticizes something legitimately, you discuss it. The American Society for Civil Engineering Journals is doing the same thing. Zednik-Bazant's analysis, which this depends on for the vertical propagation of the towers, is totally flawed. He quadruples the kinetic energy by using the maximum design load and free fall. That wasn't in free fall.
Well, Bazant's using kind of a mathematical model which doesn't actually represent the actual collapse. And if you look at this picture here on my screen, like you can see the core remaining.
Using Bazant. Maybe NIST needs to use your analysis, Mick. Okay, because Bazant's is bogus. And so is the NIST analysis on the towers because of that. Bazant's analysis is bogus, and they don't have your analysis, Mick. So I want them to do a new one. Now, if you want to suggest
your analysis, basically a worst-case analysis for whether progressive collapse could actually happen or not.
Bazant has a no-case analysis. There's no, it doesn't work. He reduces the column energy absorption by 3 times, and he quadruples the kinetic energy. It's kind of missing the
point there, because the collapse didn't go through the columns.
Of course it did, Mick.
Why are these columns still standing here in this picture?
Mick, that's way down after the collapse.
That's halfway up the building.
Mick, I'm talking about at the beginning of the collapse, not 40 stories down or 30 stories down. At the beginning of that collapse, you had a 73 million pound 12-story upper section. Mm-hmm. Inertia alone is going to keep that dropping straight down. It's not moving to the side unless you have a lateral force. So it did not miss the columns. The reason it moves at 2/3 the rate of gravity, which, by the way, if a car was accelerating at that, would do an 11.2 second quarter mile. Most cars today can't do better than 16. That's how fast the towers collapsed. But the columns would contact each other in a natural collapse, and you would have had an enormous deceleration because those columns are very strong. The exterior columns only had 20% of their capacity used, and the core a third. So the upper section, they could support 3 to 5 times that. In order to break through it, you have to have an amplified load and an impact. And that what happens there is the impacting object has to decelerate. Guess what? When you measure it, that's the South Tower.
Columns are not lined up, though.
I don't want to talk about the South Tower. The North Tower is what we measured because it doesn't tilt. And the same thing happens that happened to the South Tower.
All it has to do is move about 3 feet to the side.
Yeah. Okay, Mick, it's not moving to the side. 73 million pounds.
To move the columns,
Mick,
3 feet to the side, push them out of the way. Then the sliding one against the other.
No, 73
it's really
million
not that
pounds.
Complicated.
Yeah, well, you show me mathematically how the North Tower could have done that, Mick, and I'll read it. I haven't seen you do that. And I don't want to do it on your website. I want you to send me a small paper on that, Mick. Why don't you do that? And we'll all read it and tell you what we think.
I think, obviously we can say, again, Mick, for example, if you made a game and outsourced it and found that there was bugs in the game, and they bring it back to you and said, "Oh, there's bugs and flaws in the game. Like, do you want to release it still?" You'd be saying, "No, we need to fix these problems."
I would like it if NIST did another report. It would be great. I just think realistically they're not going to.
Well, you and Tony agree on
there's
that
justification for doing it.
Nick, I think you deep down understand they need to do it. You just don't believe they want to do it.
No, I'd like them to do it.
Yeah, well, that's
I don't think that there is justification for spending the money.
Well,
but that's why I'm quite excited about the University of Alaska Fairbanks study.
Nick, NIST is
and
responsible.
I'd hope something useful will come out of that.
The University of Alaska is not responsible. NIST and our Congress and our president.
Well, surely they're being paid $360,000 to do the report, so they're responsible to the people paying them.
They are, but they're not responsible to the country, and our government is. And they need to do it because they have a seriously flawed and actually bogus report. That's the right.
Well, maybe we should wait until Alaska gives their opinion.
Well, that's what we're probably going to do.
It's a bit like you shouldn't really say it's the University of Alaska doing it because it's really just Leroy Hulsey and
I didn't say the University of Alaska was doing it. I said the University of Alaska Fairbanks study done by Dr. Leroy Hulsey.
Okay.
Well, should we come to an agreement on this little part of the subject that once the people release the study, obviously Mick, you'll give it a look, and then obviously you can decide in your own opinion whether or not you support what's being shown in the information, and whether you feel, again, like alongside Tony, that maybe an official NIST report should be done. Based on what.
Well, I'm definitely going to look at that study in detail when it comes out. I've already spent quite a bit of time looking at their preliminary stuff and found quite a few problems with it. Some of which I touched on.
You found were really problems, Mick. Okay, so
I think as well.
Want to discuss it? We can. But.
With the sort of, obviously from Tony's standpoint as well, is obviously with NIST doing it and the government backing it and behind it, obviously offers to an extent more credibility from the general public, because say for example this guy does when his paper's officially released, people are still going to be like, oh well, the government doesn't lie, they've already done it and disproved what he's saying, so we'll follow that one. Whereas, for example, if the president of the United States comes out and says something about a conspiracy theory, people will believe it. Whereas
they're already saying Donald Trump lies all the time. So.
But you know what I mean. Obviously,
agree with that.
Offers that offers some credibility to what you're saying. For example, I've spouted some stuff to like my parents or whatever, weeks before, and then it comes on the news and they're like, oh yeah, oh okay, and I'm like, well, I told you that 2 weeks ago, but now the news is saying that you believe it. Do you know what I mean? So I think in that sense of things as well with the reporting and stuff.
Yeah, I think the problem here is like, how do we communicate these issues to the general public? Tony gave his quite detailed explanation at the start, but I'm sure a lot of people's eyes were glazing over when he was talking about like springs being in series and things like that, because the vast majority of people just don't understand that type of
They
thing.
don't understand it. But engineers will, Mick. Okay, you probably understood it. Other engineers, I would assume you're part engineer. You were a video
Part
game
engineer, I'm a
developer.
software engineer.
Yeah, you are a software engineer by degree, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
so you're an engineer.
For
right?
me, obviously, it's all about, with the architects and engineer stuff, it can come across really overwhelming with the information. And, when you was talking at the beginning, Tony, obviously I'm not an engineer, so it's sometimes hard for the average person to understand.
Right. No, I understand
it needs
that.
to be
And we
presented
tried,
maybe a bit more simplified.
well, we try to do that. You can only simplify so much. And what you have to do is there's some things you may need to learn. And I can tell you a site, this guy, IGSP, I can't remember the fellow's name. It's Noel or something. He says that at first, when he first started hearing like things that I said or David Chandler and others, he needed to go read some things. And then he started nodding his head in agreement, he said. I think it's IGSP studies or something about Building 7. But at any rate, the point is we need a new analysis. There is a cover-up, and somebody at NIST, they do not want to reinvestigate this, and they're stonewalling. They're not being open about it and recognizing the obvious errors and discussing them and redoing their analysis, which they should be doing. In an honest situation, that's what would happen.
I think there's kind of a little asymmetry of perception of the issue here, though. A lot of people obviously think there's something up with 9/11, but the majority of people think that the government explanation is sensible. Now, these aren't just simply people taking one word over the other. People think that the government explanation is sensible because they saw what happened on 9/11. They saw planes fly into buildings. They saw the buildings collapse. It seems like the most reasonable explanation. Because there was a fire. Firemen said the buildings were going to collapse. Buildings collapsed from fire.
Everything that glitters isn't gold. Okay? Do you know a lot of things aren't instinctive? And there's a question I ask people, and you may know the answer. If you had a cubic foot of moist air, water vapor, and a cubic foot of dry air at the same pressure and temperature, which one would be heavier, the moist air or the dry air?
I don't even know the answer to that.
Well, I'm going to tell you how instinct doesn't always work, and I'll tell you why. And you might be surprised, both of you, when you hear the answer and the explanation. Okay,
they'd be similar.
It's the moist air. No, they're not similar, Mick. And if they were, you and I wouldn't. The three of us wouldn't be here. The moist air is lighter. The dry air is heavier. And if that weren't true, water vapor wouldn't rise. I read this in the 1970s in the Navy. I was taking a jet engine correspondence course, and the professor that wrote the book said the moist air is lighter than dry air. I said, how can that be? When I went to Villanova after getting out of the service, I asked my physics professor. He guessed the moist air was heavier. And I told him about the book. He wanted to see it. It wasn't until the late 90s that I was reading weather books to get statistics for doing environmental spec for cell phone antennas that are now ubiquitous. I was working in that industry for a while. Then I ran across Jack Williams from USA Today, his book, and he explained why. Because H2O is, the atomic number is 18. H is 1, you have 2 of them. Oxygen 16, 1 of them, that's 18. Air is 78% N2. Nitrogen doesn't exist monotomically, it's diatomic. And oxygen's the same way. So N2 is 28 because nitrogen is 14. You have 78% times 28, and O2 is 32. You have 21% of that. Air is about 29 atomic weight. So dry air, which is heavier than gaseous H2O. And if that weren't true, water vapor wouldn't rise, clouds wouldn't form, water vapor wouldn't circulate.
Well, that doesn't sound true. That doesn't sound true to me. I think you're taking one unintuitive thing and then you're intuiting something else. Because if the air parcels are at the same temperature and pressure, one isn't right.
You made a mistake here with this whole shockwave thing, I think. I think it's happening far too fast. You think the shockwave coming down the building is the actual penthouse going through it. And I don't think that's true at all. I think the penthouse stopped at the 46th story or so, which was a very strong floor. And the reason I can say that is I think there's other evidence that I want to show. There's no dust coming out of the north face of the building when you're saying that penthouse is crashing through there. There's no dust. There's no dust occurring until the exterior comes down.
Well,
Okay?
that's because the air would rush out the back of the building and to the sides.
Okay.
It's not the
All
same
right.
as the
Well,
towers
all right,
collapse.
all
I
right.
think
I'm gonna show
Jay
a
may
video.
be not knowing what we're talking about here. Maybe we should
Let's show a
explain
video.
it.
Let me
Yeah,
show a
Real
video.
quickly.
simplify it for little old me.
Let me show a video. You could actually show this. I guess I gotta.
Let me
have to
just
share-
find the video
share.
real quick.
I got to share my screen, right?
Yeah. In response to the fireman comment, Mick, when you said like firemen saw fires and that, you had a lot of firemen also, like over 300 or 150 odd, that said that they heard explosions and they saw it coming down like boom, 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 and they all kind of say like a controlled demolition theory, and these are like eyewitness accounts, countless numbers of them that do say that there was an explosion, there was explosions before the planes even hit, and so on. Like, what's that about?
Well, people in an event like this, you're going to hear sounds that sound like explosions, things falling off the buildings, things exploding because of the fires.
They also said they saw a couple firemen said they saw flashes going around the building like a belt. Now that's not an odd random flash. And this is a professional saying that. It looks like there was demolition charges in the building, and they felt like there was demolition charges. And Building 7, I want to show this 30-second or 1-minute compilation.
Yeah, if you give me 1 second, I'll get it up on my end as well, just so the audio comes through.
Okay.
Give me 1 second, and then we can play them at the same time. That way it'll work better.
Okay.
So it's the 1 minute one, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
The first one. You ready?
Most certainly.
Is my screen shared?
Yeah, your screen shared.
Yeah.
It's just the audio won't come through, so I'm going to put the audio on now. Anyways, let's play it.
All right, you ready?
For the third time today.
Okay.
It's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen.
This is Dan Rather, the former CBS anchor.
A building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
Did they actually use the word
That's
broadcast?
Building 7
and who
coming
was
down.
that was telling you this?
Now, you'll see there's no dust through the windows until the exterior comes down. Did you see that, Mick? You'll see it again in other issues. No dust until now, after the exterior comes down. There's no way that penthouse went through there, and no dust came out those windows.
The collapse follows the penthouse, the window breakage.
The window breakage could be caused by a shock wave from the penthouse coming down a couple stories in the building. And that shock wave is pretty fast. I think it's far too... See how
No, the shockwave, actually, if you sync up the shockwave with the NIST simulation of the building falling, it actually moves at the same speed as the fall of the penthouse.
I don't believe that.
All right, let me share my screen then, and we'll see.
No, Mick, I'd have to see analysis.
Well, it's very simple. I've done the analysis, and I can show it to you right now.
Mick, it gets disproven right there when you don't see any dust until the exterior comes down.
Right, well, let me just show you the analysis of the speed of the collapse wave.
Yeah, Mick, I want a little more analysis than what I saw on your site.
Yeah, well, let's show it to the other people, and they can have a look at it. If you could stop sharing your screen, I could share mine.
Okay, all right. I got to stop sharing my screen. Okay.
Okay, so you see the 3 buildings there?
It's just come up now, yeah.
Yeah, we can see.
All right. So this is a looping synced version of real-time videos sped up times 8.
Nick, I think you sped up the NIST failure on the far right.
Yeah, they're all sped up times 8.
Yeah,
so they're all times synced. You can see by the speed of collapse of the penthouse at the top, they're all sped up.
That's shockwave
now
very fast.
You can see this shockwave matches this red area here, which is the collapse of the penthouse. It actually moves slightly ahead of it.
Well, it's basically, and because it's hitting something, Mick. That's why the shockwave starts at the top.
So, but you were saying the shockwave was go very fast. It's basically doing at the same force speed.
Mick, I don't know that it's the same speed. I'd have to see something other than couple little videos put together. I want measurements. But the point I'm trying to
These are
make
actually
is
what happened.
there's no way that penthouse is falling all the way down through there like this shows on the right. And you're trying to claim when no dust comes out of the windows until the exterior comes down. That means
that's because none of the windows are broken, and the air that is being pushed gets pushed out the back of the building.
Oh, come on. It's only coming out the back when the penthouse, which was in the north side of the building, you know. The penthouse was on the north side. But you're telling me all
the entire building.
No, the penthouse was in the northeast corner. It was right up against the north face. It was
but it goes all the way nearly back to the back of the south thing.
It's 100 foot long. That doesn't matter. You're telling me something that's located right up on the north face and goes 100 feet back. All the air goes out the other side. Come on, Mick. Okay, that's like silly. The point
air goes where there is no resistance. So if there's all the windows are missing on the south side of the building, then the air is going to
windows were
also going to go to the east, to the west. Sorry, because the floors are
windows were broken by the shockwave when that penthouse came down a couple stories.
Your theory is that the penthouse just fell like 1 or 2 floors.
That's right, because no dust comes out of the exterior until because I think all the core columns were still
and
there.
Think there was this shockwave that went down that was caused by what exactly?
The penthouse hitting the 47th and 46th floor.
And this caused a slow motion ripple down the surface of the building?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Surely it would move, the shockwave would move at the speed of the sound in material. Is he saying it's going to ripple like a...
The shockwave causes distortion. It's not the stress wave.
Okay.
You're confusing the stress wave with the shock wave.
So this distortion wave, you could calculate the speed at which that would propagate through the exterior of the building?
Nick, there's no way that penthouse came down without...
You're just going by your feeling here, like you think it's not.
No, it's not feeling, okay? There's several reasons I say it. One is there's no dust coming out of the exterior when you're saying, and this is saying, the penthouse fell all the way down through the east side. Then, on top of that, there's no exterior deformation like you see in the NIST model. I'm glad you're showing this. See all the deformation at the top?
Yeah.
You don't see that in the real building. That's because in the real building, it didn't come all the way down like that. It only came down a couple stories. And then most of the core columns were there intact for most of the building, up to like the 44th or 45th floor. And 8 stories of the core, the complete core had to be taken out, okay, to affect the collapse of all 4 sides of the building at the same time. All 4 corners of the roof line come down simultaneously. You can't do that with what this is saying or what you're trying to say. It isn't happening. And you don't have any deflection of that exterior like this is showing in the real collapse.
You have a little deflection, but obviously it's not the same.
That's a rotation.
You can see it. You can see it bending here.
But that's only after the exterior comes down, Mick.
After the interior comes down, yeah.
It's after the exterior comes down, you get a little rotation to the east side. There's no rotation on the east side until the exterior comes down. And this is saying, and in this model, when they take that whole east side out, the east side exterior radically deforms in their model. If you can show that again, you'll see it. Okay, and that's not realistic. It can't be happening in the real collapse because those columns would deform just like they did.
This I assume would be something that Hulsey's study would show. Is he going to actually model a collapse of the building, or is he just going to model up to no collapse?
Oh, I think he's modeling collapse. He's doing a progressive collapse, yeah.
So we'll see how his exterior differs from reality and from the NIST model. Have you seen this yet?
He's working on it. I haven't seen everything yet, no.
Because, it doesn't take that much to make quite significant differences in things, like the strength of the moment-resisting connections that hold the wall together.
You can't make all 4 walls come down.
See, again, you're saying definitive things which would seem to prove.
No, I can prove it.
Well, that's great. That's great. So why do we need to have a new study if you can prove it?
Because we're trying to talk to the public here, Mick. You and I are having a debate for the public mind. That's what we're doing. Okay.
So if we get a new NIST study and there's all this corruption, surely they're just going to come up with the same answer again.
Well, then we're going to say it again, and we're going to show the corruption again.
So how is that going to help? Why don't you just demonstrate that the collapse is impossible?
Eventually, some things get cleaned up, Nick. Eventually they do. And sometimes when you put enough pressure on, the crooks worry about getting caught the next time. So that's why
what you need to do, really, I think, is make a much more compelling case than you've been
I
making
think
up to this point.
I think I made a very compelling case. Maybe not in your mind, but in a number of people's minds.
Engineers. Well, I don't think there's any engineers watching this podcast.
I take it different from you, Mick. Okay, when I was at Lockheed Martin, anybody I told, as soon as they looked into it, they understood there was a problem. Okay, every place I've been since I started looking into this and told other engineers about it, they understood it very quickly. Okay, so
I'm sure they understood the issues that you were raising, but did they agree with you that it proved that it was not a collapsed use of fire?
They understood that there's a problem with the NIST report. Yes, they did.
Yeah. And like I said, I would like a new NIST report.
Redone, yeah.
I would like a new NIST report too. It would be great if you could have one. I just realistically don't think that, based on what you've been presenting so far, you actually get one. Maybe with Alaska.
Well, right. Okay, we'll see. I don't think you can support the NIST report, and
I would encourage people to read it.
Investigation, and hopefully we'll get one. Okay.
Do you not think, like Mick? Do you not think a lot of coincidences had to happen that day? Certain elements not to be sort of, certain things not to be working properly, or
yeah,
whatever.
sure. I mean, in any situation, for an end result to happen, coincidences have to happen. But I don't think they're particularly exceptional coincidences. They were lucky that they hit the buildings as well as they did. But,
I mean, 'cause obviously you've got, pilots and whatever. I mean, I know we've gone over this. Pilots that have tried simulating it and hitting it at that speed.
They couldn't hit the buildings until they came down the landing speeds. And I have to tell the audience this. The dynamic pressure is a function of velocity squared. So 500 miles an hour is something like 20-some times. I can do it real quick. 160 squared is 25,600. And 500 squared is 250,000. So it's like 9 to 10 times the pressure. You make any little move on that stick and you're going to miss the buildings. And pilots in a simulator couldn't do it. According to one of the airline's instructors, the simulator instructor, they tried to do it.
So you think it was remote control planes hit the buildings?
There's a possibility of that, Mick. The South Tower plane...
Well, they would have to be if the pilots couldn't hit it.
The South Tower plane wasn't nosing for the South Tower. It was going towards New York City Hall until it was about 3 to 5 miles out, and it made a 45-degree turn. A human pilot, especially a hijacker, okay, who had minimal training, is going to be nosing. He turned around I live in New Jersey. He turned around New Brunswick, 50 miles out or so. He would be nosing for the building. He wasn't. He was going towards New York City Hall, and I wouldn't put it past Mayor Rudy Giuliani to have put a homing device in New York City Hall and then had a handoff a few miles away from the tower with a smaller homing device.
Seems very speculative. I've flown planes before.
I identify that as speculation.
You decide you're going to make a turn at a certain point.
Mick, I can tell you right now, those towers are hard to hit. They're hard to hit at 500 miles an hour.
Could we not agree that at least the pilots, they were so inexperienced, like you've had their
No, we cannot agree on that. The pilots that hit the buildings, a lot of them had commercial licenses, which means that they had to have, I think it's something like 600 hours of actual in-flight
training.
training.
Pilots for 30 years couldn't do it in a simulator unless they were at landing speed.
Yeah, well, Jesse Ventura
did it at 500 miles an hour.
The plane that killed JFK. If you try hard enough, you won't be able to do things. OJ couldn't put his gloves on.
OJ killed his wife and Ron Goldman. That's proven. Okay? I don't believe OJ. Do you?
No, but he couldn't put his gloves on.
Okay.
Which is the same thing as pilots who agreed on that. Trying to demonstrate that they couldn't hit the buildings. And the same thing as Jesse Ventura trying to pretend that he couldn't get like 3 shots off in 5 seconds.
Gloves on because he was wearing latex gloves underneath that create friction when he tried to put the leather gloves on. That was bogus.
Yes, I know.
They shouldn't let him do it.
People can be motivated into not doing things when they're doing experiments.
That's just like NIST leaving off the stiffeners and ignoring the side plates of the girder.
Perhaps it is. But my point is, just because some pilots who think it's impossible showed that it was impossible doesn't mean it's impossible.
No, they couldn't do it.
Get me behind a simulator, and I'll give it a go.
Okay, Nick. I'll find out who this airline instructor was, and I'll have him get in contact with you.
Where did you get the information for how many hours and stuff they flew for? Because I couldn't find any to say they'd had like commercial jet experience. All I ever see is...
It wasn't commercial jet experience. It was commercial pilot experience, which is a type of license that you need, and it basically is a lot of navigation stuff. It's a license you need to be able to take passengers in places. But they did have sufficient training. The stuff you may have seen about like them, Cessnas like not being rented to them, that happened a long time before the actual attacks, and they did a lot more training after that. So if you look at the actual what their training was current with the attacks, then it was sufficient for them to do that. And there's a lot of nonsense going around, like the Pentagon plane, for example. People talk about this 360-degree turn or whatever it was before it hit the Pentagon. And the only reason they did that was that you needed to lose altitude. It's a standard maneuver that's really easy to do. You just ease off the throttle a bit, and you set a small turn, and you turn all the way around, and you get back where you started, and you're lower.
It is funny
very simple.
that he hit the opposite side of the building from the direction he was coming in.
No, he was still going in pretty much the same direction at that point.
No,
he just turned around.
He hit the east side, and he was coming from the west. So he went around the back and then hit the back door.
But he needed to make that maneuver at that point to change altitude.
He may have.
I think
and it's an easy maneuver, but people say that's an impossible maneuver. It's really easy.
I don't complain about that. All I know is there's a lot of problems with those building collapses. The NIST report, when looked at by people like me, is easily shown to not be valid.
And then why do you need a new investigation if it's easily shown?
Whoa, Mick. Because we need to know as a community what happened, okay? And if it was a controlled demolition, it was done without a permit, and some of the politicians in New York City performed criminal acts. That's why we need an investigation, Mick.
Do you think we should have an investigation of the towers?
Yes, I do.
Do you think they were controlled demolition as well?
I think a lot of people need to be interrogated that had access to the interiors of those buildings. They weren't. They've never been interrogated. No contractors or people. I'm not talking about people.
The reason being, I think, is that people saw the planes hit the building, and that's by far and away the most sensible explanation.
Okay. No, it's not by far and away the best explanation. Okay, controlled demolition is much better. All those core columns wouldn't fail on their own simultaneously due to fire. They were taken down just like
which is why the building tilted over.
No, they did all come down in the North Tower. They ought to come down at the same time, Mick. Okay,
there was some tilt in the North Tower.
1 degree, and it didn't happen until after the first
plenty.
It was 2 or 3. That's not plenty. The columns don't miss each other. They're only 3/8 of an inch off across the other side of the building with 1 degree of tilt. There's no way the columns miss. There's no way all those core columns failed that fast and simultaneously. It's just no way. Okay, and I got to run and get something to drink. So we can do this again if you want, but I got to get moving at some point.
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
well, it's been a very interesting discussion.
Yeah,
and
Mick,
I look forward to the Alaska study coming out.
Maybe
we can talk again then.
Questions randomly. If Tony wants to run off, we can still chat, or would you like to go and we can do this another time? I don't mind.
Yeah, we can do that, and you can tell him you don't have to agree to it now, Mick, but we could do it again if you wanted to.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
All right, I'll see you guys.
Cool,
man. Bye.
Oh, no.
So it's just me and you.
Yeah, it's probably not fair to discuss too many technical stuff without Tony being here. But if you got any questions for me, then maybe.
No, mine was more about the planes and the report with kind of what happened on the day with like Norman's testimony, if you know about that.
Norman Mineta?
Yeah, where he said about sort of Dick Cheney and the stand down order, etc.
Right. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with that. I think that's talking about someone came into a room and said, "Does the order still stand?" And Cheney says, "Of course it still stands." But I'm not sure if people knew what he's actually referring to at that point. But that's not something I really looked into very much.
Just where did you find the information on the pilots, just so I can look it up after?
I suspect it was 9/11 myths.
Just so I know if...
But there's a lot of different places on it. Yeah.
Because
If you
obviously,
look at
like
the
flying
9/11 myths, there's an article called "Flight School Dropout,"
yeah,
which has the information about that
okay,
and various pilots' opinions. But I haven't looked at this in much, but there's probably like a whole bunch of articles. But I think their actual certificates are fairly well documented.
no, it's just like 'cause obviously flying like a jet and a Cessna, there's a
Yeah.
big difference.
Well,
You know
the
what I
thing
mean?
is, with jets, like most of the complication is in taking off and landing. When you're in the air, essentially, you can just turn the stick or the yoke left or right, and you will move left or right. It's not that different. It's just much more cumbersome because it's takes longer to respond. But the essentials of flying a plane in the air by sight are pretty much the same with a big plane and a small plane. You speed up to go up, you slow down to go down, you tilt the plane to turn left and right, and you can pretty much do it all with those two things, really.
Okay. And then what was like your theory behind why none of the planes were shot down? I mean, this Shanksville, I don't know whether they came out and said the Shanksville one did get shot down.
Yeah, no, I think they kind of messed up. Really, they weren't prepared for something like this, and they sent the fighter jets in the wrong direction because there was this miscommunication. They tried to intercept, but they didn't actually intercept any of the planes in time. The planes were very low off the radar for a lot of the time. So it's just basically, they were slow to respond and they made some mistakes.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's because I watched this. Obviously, the documentary 9/11, the new Pearl Harbor or whatever by like Massimo, whatever. And obviously, if you haven't seen it, it's quite long, but definitely worth a watch. And maybe a lot of
I've looked a bit of it.
Yeah, a lot of conspiracy theorists are kind of going into there now. So obviously, I'm just saying if there's points you want to look at that conspiracy theorists are going to try and use or throw up or whatever or start to believe in, there's a documentary maybe you can try and debunk points from.
People actually have mentioned that a few times to me before, and I haven't sat through the whole thing. I think it's 4 hours long, but I have kind of just dived in and looked at things, and it did seem to be repeating a lot of the stuff that had been debunked years ago. Like it probably mentions the whole thing with the pilots' training not being very good, which was explained like 10 years ago. So it's it's kind of frustrating to see things coming up again and again that have been explained. Interested in talking about the new stuff, like what Tony's talking about with the study at the University of Alaska with Leroy Hulsey. That's kind of interesting because some new information might actually come out of it. But at this stage, I think 9/11 truth is largely just recycling a lot of things that were explained a really long time ago.
I mean, obviously, it must get fucking annoying for you to keep going over and over the same stuff. So I'm sure debating Tony sometimes refreshing. Do you know what I mean? Because he offers new elements. The webcams died, by the way.
Everyone's got different opinions as well. There are people who, something like 80% of 9/11 truthers don't think a plane hit the Pentagon. It's quite surprising, really, when you look into it. And there are differences of opinion within 9/11 truth. This is something we didn't get to discuss with Tony, but he says that none of the exterior columns would need to be destroyed or blown up for the collapse that we see, but he thinks that the interior columns must have been destroyed. But a lot of other people say that if there's any resistance, then you wouldn't see freefall. So if you've got these exterior columns still there, you wouldn't see freefall. You might have seen Richard Gage's demonstration that he does with two cardboard boxes. And he's basically cardboard boxes are only exterior columns, and so he's saying that if there's some resistance, then it couldn't have happened. So I think on that aspect there's some disagreement. I mean, Tony should correct me if I'm wrong, and we shouldn't get into it because he's not really here. But he actually said that you don't need to destroy the exterior columns.
Yes, loads of information for me to even dissect. I'm just trying to get my head around it, especially when Tony's talking.
It is overly technical.
Yeah, but no, it was a pleasure hosting you both, and hopefully we can reconvene and do it again.
Let's give it a go.
and kind of see what we go from there. But yeah, massively appreciate your time, dude, and have a nice day in that. All right.
All right, Joe. Thanks a lot. You have a good day.
Yeah,
Bye.
look after yourself, mate. Bye.
Bye.